Joining me now is Mayor Satya Rhodes-Conway of Madison, Wisconsin. The city's Climate Forward agenda announced its goals of reaching 100% renewable energy by 2030. As of this month, Madison is 75% of the way there. Welcome, Mayor. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Let's start off with a simple but important question. How is Madison making itself more resilient to climate change?
You know, the large issue that our community has really been focused on in the past several years is flooding. And we had floods in 2018 that were really, I think, a wake-up call for our community. Since then, we have embarked on the process of mapping our entire watershed and identifying places where we can intervene to reduce the risk of flooding, to increase infiltration of water, to apply green infrastructure, which of course all has, lots of other climate benefits as well. So that's one way that we're really focusing on resilience. This year, we're hoping to start some more work on issues around heat islands and the impacts of heat on health. We're also starting to work in air quality. All of these things will impact the resilience of our community and also help us to meet our climate goals.
What are some of the lessons learned as far as implementing these programs? What have you learned from stakeholders? What advice would you have for other cities to achieve the success you've had?
Well, we really think of our work in sort of two frames. One is the work that we need to do to reduce our contribution to the problem, right? So how are we reducing our greenhouse gas footprint? And there's a lot to say about that. The other piece, of course, is how do we become more resilient to the impacts of climate change? And that's what I just talked about. On the greenhouse gas reduction front, we're really proud of the work that we've done internally in the city to reduce our impact in our buildings. We have a number of LEED certified buildings, and we're investing in energy efficiency in all of our facilities. Our fleet, I would say, is probably one of the most sustainable fleets in the country. I'm particularly proud of our electric fire engine, the first electric fire engine in North America, produced right here in Wisconsin by Pierce. So we're really pushing on all fronts here. And in terms of other communities, I think it's really important to set a goal and then to really look at what are the places in your own functions as a city that you can reduce emissions, because we as government need to lead by example if we're going to ask the rest of our community, individuals, the private sector, to reduce their own emissions.
When you ran for mayor, you ran on climate change. President Biden and Vice President Harris ran on climate change. But they did pass a bipartisan transportation bill, but a lot of the climate change initiatives were going to be in a $3.5 trillion bill that is now dead and may get resurrected. Have you been disappointed that the Democratic Party has not been able to pass something? And do you think that they can do something between now and the election? After all, they can pass if they unite. They have reconciliation, so they can pass. The House and Senate can be signed into law, and who knows what's going to happen in the midterms. Looking at the next several months, do you think that Democrats can actually resurrect some type of policy to show to voters, hey, this is why we got elected, and this is why you should vote for Democrats this fall?
Well, so I certainly hope that Congress can get something more done on climate. I think the president has made clear his commitment to taking a whole of government approach on climate change. But I wouldn't say that I'm disappointed at all. Our relationship with the Biden administration has been a really productive and positive one. We've been able to access federal funding to use on issues of sustainability, both through ARPA and now through the infrastructure bill. Of course, we'd love to be able to do more, but I think that the support we've gotten from the Biden administration on climate has been really great, and also from the various federal agencies. Transportation, of course, jumps out as being one where they are really moving on climate issues. We are starting a bus rapid transit system here in Madison, and thanks to the funding from the infrastructure bill, we are going to be able to start that with all electric buses, as opposed to only about half electric buses, which was our plan before the infrastructure funding. So I'm really actually grateful to the Biden administration for what they've been able to do to help us address our climate needs. And, of course, I do want Congress to take bigger and bolder action on climate. But we are just going to keep working on doing whatever we can at the local level to make sure that we make progress.
You've testified before Congress on climate change, and obviously it's been a big theme of what you've done in office. But for the average consumer, a lot of people struggling right now with inflation and gas prices, worried about nuclear war, honestly, with the invasion of Ukraine. To the average person watching this, who may think, climate change is an issue, it's man-made. Most scientists obviously believe that. But why should I care? Because it's really it's something down 10, 20 years down the road. What's the import of everybody chipping in today?
Well, climate change is not 10, 20 years down the road. Climate change is right now. Climate change is flooding in Madison, it's heat waves, it's ice storms, it's hurricanes, it's fires. So climate change is right now, and we are all feeling the impacts of it. And so we do all need to take action on it. And, all of the things that you listed as, folks being worried about, I'm worried about them too. And one of the answers is to act on climate, right? Because if we can shift our fuel sources to more sustainable fuels and more sustainable energy, we become less reliant on other countries that are subject to the geopolitical craziness that's going on right now. You just look at what's happening in Europe, right? If they weren't so reliant on natural gas, they would not be vulnerable to Russia shutting off their natural gas. So that, to me, is a wake-up call for us to look at what are we doing to be more sustainable in our fuel sources so that we're not vulnerable to other countries messing with our energy supply. I think that's really important for us all to look at. In terms of price concerns, you think about being upset about the price of gas. Well, the price of electricity is a lot cheaper, and it's your budget is going to thank you if you're driving an EV right now. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to address folks' concerns through sustainability and through climate action. We know that looking at energy efficiency, having distributed renewable energy is something that saves people money on their monthly utility bills. And so we're doing everything we can here in Madison to help folks access those renewable technologies and to help control their own greenhouse gas footprint, but also help their budget at the same time.
When you're talking about transitioning away from fossil fuels and dealing with new initiatives and really transitioning people from one industry to the next within the energy sector, what has that effect been at the local level in Madison as far as changes in the labor workforce, and what are the challenges in the months and years ahead as far as job retraining?
Well, so in Madison, actually, we come out ahead on this front because, if you're talking about strictly fossil fuels, we import everything. And so to the extent that we can reduce our use of fossil fuels and increase our use of solar and geothermal and biodiesel, for example, those are all sources that are a lot closer to home. And are going to do a lot better for our economy. So that the money we're spending on energy right now will stay close to home and circulate in our economy better. So we come out ahead on that front. We come out ahead on the jobs front as well because, there's a whole bunch of job opportunities for example, for mechanics learning to work on EVs, for folks in the biodiesel supply chain, for folks in the solar supply chain. And we here at the city are actually doing our part to help train folks up into that. We have apprentices in our fleet division that are learning to work on all of our vehicles, but particularly being trained up on EVs and biodiesel. We have apprentices in our engineering division who are learning to install solar panels and getting their certifications so they can go out into a very competitive job market and get jobs in the solar industry, or we hope stick around and work for us here in public works. So I think from both an economic and a workforce perspective, the sustainable economy is a win for Madison. I recognize that's not true, in every community, and we certainly do need to think about a just transition. But here in Madison, I think we're going to come out ahead.
Last question about mayors. I don't think mayors get the respect they deserve, and as we've seen gridlock in Washington, have you seen a lot of feedback among your colleagues, among mayors? Pete Buttigieg was a mayor, and now he's had a pretty successful presidential run. Now he's the Secretary of Transportation. With gridlock really gripping Washington, do the mayors talk and say, hey, you should try this, you should try this, so we can figure out how to deal with this problem?
Absolutely. I'm honored to be one of the co-chairs of Climate Mayors, which is a national organization focused on climate and what cities can do and what mayors can do to take action on climate. It's a bipartisan organization. Yes, we talk, we share ideas, we share inspiration, we share tips and technology. We compete a little bit. I heard recently from the mayor of Boise, who's a friend, that she was trying out electric garbage trucks. And I went to my fleet director and said, why don't we have electric garbage trucks? So yes, we're absolutely talking to each other. And, throughout the last presidential administration, cities and mayors were absolutely leading the way on climate. And we're going to continue to lead on climate. Again, I'm delighted to have a partner with the Biden administration right now. But, if that changes, or if things change at the congressional level, we're going to keep leading at the city level. And the mayors are going to be on the forefront of this work for as long as it's needed.
Absolutely. Mayor Satya Rhodes-Conway of Madison, Wisconsin, thank you for joining us, and thank you for sharing what you're doing at the local level. Very important stuff.
Thank you.